then to elect a new chair. Our planning policy, I guess it's Plan 09003 requires us to appoint a chair and vice chair in the first meeting following the reappointments by council. So that makes that today. So I will open up the floor to nominations for chair.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Martha Armstrong.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Killam. Any other nominations? Calling once, calling twice. I'm assuming we have an acceptance before we, that being the case, we can welcome our returning chair, Martha Armstrong. And I will, and I'll hand this over to our new chair.
I've got no screen. I've got no screen here.
That's for sure. You coming to breakfast tomorrow?
No, I can't.
We've had an election of the chair and the vice chair, and at this particular point in time, we're going to deal with our agenda. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Anything anybody else wanted to add? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Ms. Friars, Mr. Morris, thank you very much. All those in favor, all those in favor or otherwise can register their vote for that now. And while we're waiting for that results of that vote to come up, with an approved agenda, this is an opportunity for anyone to disclose any conflict of interest issues that they may have with the agenda. That item is passed. Councillor Killen, were you going to vote? Oh, sorry.
No, thank you.
Yep, go ahead.
Yep, thank you, Madam Chair. I did want to bring up something regarding maybe not an addition to this agenda, but possibly a future one, near future one. And I'm not sure how to go about this other than it's to do with reinstatement of an agrologist's report regarding possible building on agricultural land.
Okay, how about we'll give you an opportunity to speak on that under other business. How's that?
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So no disclosure of conflict of interest? No? Great. So is there any business arising from the minutes? Oh, our approval of minutes. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead here. We have in our package the minutes from our November the 14th, 2023 meeting. And if there are no errors or omissions noted by any of the members, I'll entertain a motion to approve. Councillor Allen, Councillor Davison, thank you. If there's no debate, voting is open. You can register your vote now. And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And was there any business arising from those minutes? Nope. Okay. So we'll move on to the business of the day. We have a couple of things. The first one is an application for a text amendment to revise the minimum area in the country residential A4 zone, and that file belongs to Ms. Jacob. And your mic is on. Oops. Your mic is on. It's all.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an application for a land use bylaw text amendment to change the requirements for semi-detached dwellings within the country residential A4 zone. The properties prompting this amendment are located along Oak Island Road in Avonport. The red circle shows the approximate location of the properties. It is within a rural area, and the properties are located within the country residential A4 zone. So the application we have is for a land use bylaw text amendment to modify minimum lot area and minimum lot frontage requirements for semi-detached dwellings within the country residential zone. Specifically, the application asked for the amendment to lots serviced by central sewer, and this would enable the applicant and the future applicants to subdivide their properties served by central sewer at a reduced lot frontage and lot area requirements. To provide a background, the country residential zone was created to maintain low-density neighborhoods in predominantly agricultural areas. The zone permits residential uses like mobile homes, one-unit dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, two-unit dwellings, and also a few other non-residential uses. If you can see so the current minimum lot area required for all residential uses, which includes all the residential uses that I just stated, is 10,000 square feet, and this is for lots serviced by central sewer. And the minimum lot frontage requirement for all residential uses is 80 feet. Again, this is for lots served by central sewer. If we look at the images over here, these are the two subject properties, the properties that's prompting this amendment. The images are the same over here to the left and the right. The properties have there are two unit dwellings on each property, and the properties measure 11,585 square feet and 13,607 square feet. And the frontages are 105 feet and 116 feet. The applicant intends to subdivide these properties, and if the subdivision happens, it will result in reduced lot area that you can see here, and also lot frontages. So this wouldn't meet the requirements of the country residential A4 zone, and that's the reason we have an application for this amendment. So if we look at the land use bylaw, most of the zones within the land use bylaw that permit a semi-detached dwelling usually has a separate set of requirements for semi-detached dwellings. And this is to enable subdivision of the individual units and to maintain similar level of efficiency in delivering services. So if you look at properties serviced by central sewer, the lot area and frontage requirement are usually 50% of what is required for 1 and 2 unit dwellings. But for properties with on-site sewer, the lot area requirement for all residential uses are the same, but the lot frontage requirement is 50% of what is required for 1 and 2 unit dwellings. And this was also the case with country residential R6 zone in the previous bylaw, bylaw 75, which is similar in nature to the current country residential A4 zone. And this is a table from the land use bylaw showing the zone requirements for country residential A4 zone. As we can see here, all residential uses, which includes mobile homes, 1 unit, 2 units, and semi-detached dwellings, have to follow the same set of requirements that is stated over here. And this a separate set of requirement was not included in this section because of an oversight by staff. This amendment was part of the planning department's housekeeping list, but having received an application specifically asking for this amendment, we had to expedite the process. Moving on to the policies. Policy 5.3.2 of the MPS is what enables this amendment, and the policy states, amend the text of the land use bylaw, provided the proposal meets the general criteria for amending the land use bylaw, set out in section 5.3, development agreements and amending the land use bylaw. And this directs us to policy 5.3.7, general criteria for all applications for development agreement and land use bylaw amendments. So these are the 3 criteria that would apply to this particular amendment. The additional criteria listed within this policy are site-specific and are more relevant to specific development or land use bylaw map amendment applications, and it does not apply to this amendment. This amendment would apply to all lots located within the country residential A4 zone. So moving on to the policy, the council shall be satisfied that the proposal is in keeping with the intent of the MPS. We'll look at this in the following slides. And the next criteria is not in conflict with the municipal bylaws or regulations. The proposed amendment is not in conflict with any of the regulations or municipal bylaws. And we do not expect any financial impact on the municipality or any villages because of this amendment. moving on to the intent. So the intent of the country residential zone, according to the MPS, is lands located in this zone are intended to maintain on-site service low-density neighborhoods consisting primarily of 1 or 2 unit dwellings, while encouraging the efficient use of land and infrastructure in an agricultural setting. The zone has also been applied to isolated areas of service development in rural areas of the municipality. In the event of conflict between an agricultural use and a non-agricultural use, the agricultural use shall take priority. And further to this, policy 3.4.30 states, zone as country residential A4, develop rural subdivisions located on a public road. The zone is intended to maintain both on-site serviced and existing municipally serviced low-density neighborhoods located outside of growth centers consisting primarily of 1 or 2 unit dwellings. In the event of conflict between an agricultural use and a non-agricultural use, the agricultural use shall take priority. And further to this, policy 3.4.31 states, permit within the country residential zone, A, agricultural uses excluding livestock operations, B, residential development on public roads, and C, dwellings containing up to 2 residential units. And finally, policy 3.4.32 states, regulate the pattern of development and limit potential conflicts with agricultural uses by controlling the frontage, lot size, and lot setbacks to encourage efficient development while also maintaining a rural character. So, as we can see from these policies, the main intent of the zone is to maintain low-density neighborhoods in predominantly agricultural areas, consisting primarily of 1 and 2 unit dwellings. And the other intent is to maintain the rural character of the area. So the zone includes both on-site serviced and existing municipally serviced low-density neighborhoods located outside the growth centers. To check if the amendment is consistent with the intent, we need to look at 2 cases here. The case of lots with on-site sewer and the case of lots with serviced by central sewer. Over the first case, the lots with on-site sewer. So over 80% of the lands located in the municipality are within rural areas and offer limited development opportunities. So lots located within these areas are usually unserviced and require an on-site septic system. As a result, the area requirement for these lots is greater, and the minimum lot area required for all residential uses for these lots is usually the same, but the frontage requirement varies. So, for example, this is a rural mixed-use zone, A2 zone, which is within a rural area. If we look at the minimum lot area here, it is 30,000 square feet for all residential uses. And the minimum lot frontage, it is 200 feet for most of the residential uses, but for semi-detached dwellings, it is 100 feet, which is half of the requirement for 1 and 2 unit or the other residential uses. Again, tidal shoreline T1 zone, this is also located within a rural area. The area here for all area requirement for all 1 unit, 2 units, and semi-detached is the same, which is 30,000 square feet. But the lot frontage requirement, it is 100 feet for 1 and 2 units, but for semi-detached dwellings, it is 50 feet. Again, the same with tidal commercial zone, 30,000 square feet for 1 unit, 2 units, and semi-detached dwellings. But the lot frontage, it is 50 for semi-detached dwellings, which is half of the requirement for 1 and 2 unit dwellings. The same case with resource zone, which is within a rural area and which also permits a semi-detached dwelling. So the area requirement for all residential uses is 30,000 square feet. The lot frontage requirement is 100 for most of the residential uses except semi-detached dwellings, which is 50 feet. So the area requirement of 30,000 square feet is the same here because of the area required to install and maintain a septic system. Septic systems cannot be shared by residential units on different lots. So in case of a 2-unit dwellings, there are 2 residential units which are located within a single lot. So in this case, the 2 units share the septic system. But with the case of semi-detached dwellings, two on-site sewage disposal systems are needed, one on each lot for each residential unit. So the proposed amendment will also result in similar requirement for semi-detached dwellings. We are looking at the same area, that is 30,000 square feet for all residential uses, including semi-detached dwellings. And we are amending the frontage requirements to half of the requirement for 1 and 2 unit dwellings. So we're not proposing any changes to the area in this case. Since there is no changes to the area, we do not expect any change to the density, so which will still help maintain the rural character of the zone. Moving on to lot serviced by central sewer. So when compared to the other agricultural zones, the A4 zone or the country residential zone was established primarily for low density residential development within agricultural area. And it has been applied to rural parts, also applied to rural parts that benefit from central sewer. So in the previous case, the 30,000 area requirement was because of the area required to install and maintain a septic system. But in this case, lots serviced by central sewer, there are no minimum requirement in terms of the area, because there is no tanks or anything that we need, or drain fields that we require on site. So when we look at the other zones, for example, the tidal shoreline zone, which is located within the rural area, which we saw earlier, here lots serviced by central sewer, the area requirement for 1 and 2 unit dwellings is 10,000 square feet, but for semi-detached dwellings, it is 50% of the area of the 1 and 2 unit dwellings. And again, the lot frontage, it is 60 feet for 1 and 2 unit, but it is half of that for semi-detached dwellings. And it is the same for tidal commercial zone, 10,000 square feet for 1 and 2 unit dwellings for lots serviced by central sewer, and 5,000 for semi-detached dwellings, which is half of the requirement. That is the same case with the frontage requirement. So similar to these zones, the proposed amendment would require semi-detached dwellings to be located on lots having an area of at least 5,000 square feet and 50 feet frontage, which is 50% of the area and frontage requirement for 1 or 2 unit dwellings. And this is also consistent with the practice for zones within urban areas that permit semi-detached dwellings. But if you look at zones within the urban areas, the lot requirement, the minimum area requirement for semi-detached dwellings is 2,000 square feet. But in this particular case, the area requirement we are looking at is a larger area, which is 5,000 square feet, in order to maintain the rural character of the zone. So this again would be consistent with the intent of the zone and the intent of the MPS. And we have the proposed amendment here. So this is the table. We'll be including a new column exclusively for semi-detached dwellings with the new requirements specified here. In terms of our process, we are at stage 4, Planning Advisory Committee. An AAC was not required for this application. A public information meeting was held on October 19, 2023 at the Horton Community Center. 16 property owners within 500 feet were notified of this application. 16 property owners within 500 feet of the properties prompting this application were notified. It was also advertised in the newspaper, and 7 members of the public were present during the meeting, including the applicant. Staff received general questions of clarifications regarding the properties and the application that prompted this amendment. There were also inquiries about the extent to which this amendment would apply, whether it would apply to the entire A4 zone or just to the subject properties. And we also received a few general comments regarding the public notification process and the challenges about navigating the municipal website for information. And based on our review of this amendment against the applicable policies, staff believed the proposed amendment would be consistent with the intent of the MPS. This should have been included in the land use bylaw when it first came into effect. So as a result, staff are recommending a positive motion. And with that, I pass it back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of clarification for staff from the committee? You did a good job. All right, so the motion before us is the Planning Advisory Committee recommends that Municipal Council give first reading to and approve a public hearing for the amendments to the text of the land use bylaw to change the minimum lot area and lot frontage requirements for semi-detached dwellings within the country residential A4 zone as described in Appendix A of the report dated December 12, 2023. Do I have a mover? Councillor Allen, Councillor Granger, thank you. Is there any debate or discussion on this? Nothing? In that case, I'll call the question and you can register your vote now. And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Jacob.
Thank you.
Our next item is options for incentive zoning, inclusionary zoning and density bonusing. And that belongs to Ms. Mosier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just going to provide a verbal update. We did hold our public participation meeting for this matter on November, I'm going to say November 14th, directly in advance of PAC. Since that time, we've not had any comments received from members of the public, and so we would ask the committee to pass the following recommendation. And I'll read it into the record. That the Planning Advisory Committee recommend that Municipal Council give first reading to and hold a public hearing regarding the draft development initiatives policies contained in Appendix B of the report dated December 12th, 2023. And pass it back to the chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions coming out of that? No? Can I have a mover? Councillor Killam? Mr. Morris, thank you. And is there any debate or discussion on this item? It will be going to council for first reading, probably first meeting in the new year. And then after that, there will be a public hearing. So there will be an opportunity for both council and the public to speak to this. If there's nothing else, I'll call the question and you can register your votes now. And that passes unanimously. All right, booting right along here. Item 10 on our agenda is other business. Councillor Killam, you had an item that you wanted to bring forward. I'll just turn your mic on here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I bring this forward mainly out of maybe situations that are in my district regarding land that has been caught up in the agricultural zones but are totally unsuitable for agriculture, but would offer an opportunity to build a home on if it wasn't under that zone. And some of that land, I know that originally there was allowance for an agrologist report to basically report to council that this land indeed is not suitable for agriculture, and that I know that's only one step, as I think everything that's to do with putting a home on any zoned agricultural in the agricultural district has to. Is it still the policy that it's sent to the Kings County Federation of Agriculture for? It's. I just want to know that because I was told it was.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Killam, what gets sent off to the Federation of Agriculture under our current policy is our business plans for new farmers. I don't believe under the old policies that the agrologist reports were sent to the Federation of Agriculture, but perhaps Ms. Javra can set me straight on that one.
Through you, Madam Chair. Ms. Mosier is correct. They have never gone to the Federation.
Okay.
The issue that we had, and it was left as an administrative decision of the development officer, agrologist reports ended up being multifaceted in their issues, in that one, and probably the biggest one for the public, is there are no agrologists willing to do these. So that's a huge stumbling block to consider this as a solution. Second is it was based on soil mapping that we did away with in the last, or in our current documents. So huge change to even consider going back to something such as an agrologist report.
Through you, Madam Chair, what was the main reason that agrologists, you could not get an agrologist to?
The main reason is that agrologists are not interested in the soil. They're, ironically, but their main focus ended up being that they would look at a property from an economic perspective, and whether or not the economics supported agriculture on that property. That was not the test that we were interested in, and for the most part, it ended up being individuals hiring soil scientists to do the soil work, as well as a surveyor to ultimately have an agrologist put that together in a report that they weren't even speaking to the results that they were speaking to. So it became very complicated, and our test was that the agrologist had to prove 60% of the lot in question was poor soils. Again, very subjective, because what's poor, what could be improved, which is really the fundamental issue of the Canada Land Inventory soils mapping that were done really, there's a few iterations, but really in the 60s and then again in the 80s. So very old data that we would argue is inappropriate to be used as a planning tool.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I think I've captured that, Ms. Mosier. Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to, just an example. I guess we discussed briefly regarding possibly looking at the realignment of the A1, A2 zone on the North Mountain and possibly South Mountain if that's required. But there is one situation where there is a party that wants to build a home, but they were caught up in the slope of the mountain, which the A1 zone had taken in, which the A2 zone is attached. There's a house right next to it, but within 100 yards, they're not allowed to. And I mean, I've visited that site, and it's just definitely not conducive for any agriculture. It's rocky, it's sloped, and this particular young couple wanted to build on it, and they cannot because it's under the A1 zone. If it was 100 yards the other way, they might be able to do something there. But that's just one example, and there's others. But I guess I'm getting back to that, maybe looking at that realignment at some point soon, and see what happens. There's opportunities there for building. I know there's other issues with this, but trying to keep it simple here.
Okay, and maybe through you, Madam Chair, just to clarify for the committee what Councillor Killam is throwing out there as a consideration for the committee is ultimately finding a way to get municipal council to direct staff to undertake an MPS amendment. It's a major change and a major change in philosophy to go down the road that is
Yeah.
being considered, but certainly would be a project council could direct staff to investigate.
Councillor Granger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, as you know, I have a couple in my district as well that actually Councillor Killam and I border each other, so we have a lot of similar problems. Just wondering if there are steps that we could take collectively to start this ball rolling, because there seems to be quite a few. I think together we've got about 10, maybe even 12 in our, right. And apparently this has been going on for quite a while. So just wondering if there's anything that we can do to start the ball rolling.
Go ahead. Who wants it? Ms. Mosier?
I believe the first step would be to pass a motion and forward it to council, but I mean, staff would be happy to look into this matter and report back. I would just point out from a policy perspective, because we spend a lot of time speaking about policy in this committee, our planning policies are fairly clear in that we are looking to direct growth to our growth centers. This is where we get the biggest bang for our buck, not just in terms of development and construction and tax revenues, but also in terms of our staff resources. So to have staff work on a project that might enable additional development within our growth centers is going to be a far more efficient use of our time than to direct those resources to evaluating additional residential development in our rural areas, which in some ways goes against the thrust of our policies and what our policies are ultimately trying to achieve. I just would put that information to the committee for consideration if you are looking to draft a motion.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to follow up on that as well, I feel remiss not to point out again to the committee, these are still new documents, relatively speaking. 2020 is when they came into play. We have not really tested the policies from an agricultural perspective fully. There's still some, I would argue, growing pains to the public. We talk about 10 people. I would argue our development officers probably field 10 a day in terms of people being told, no, you cannot build in the agricultural zone. It is a common result of agricultural protection that not everyone is going to be happy. And also we cannot form policy based on individual parcels or situations. So policy may not, not to say that we can't do something, but we need to be going in with our eyes open that a policy review may not end up helping the 10 that you have identified. We don't know what that would come out to be in terms of the result or the recommendation that we find. It's just, these are new documents. Just keep that in mind.
Councillor Granger?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I completely understand the use, especially of staff time, is delicate. This isn't going to happen overnight, and that's totally not what we're expecting, but we can maybe manage to take one step forward over a long period of time. I'm assuming this is maybe a 5 or 10 year outlook. That's what I'm assuming, but you know what happens when you assume. So I think maybe between Councillor Killam and I, would it be beneficial to have an actual comprehensive list of the people that this affects? Or does that matter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Really, no. We
Okay.
shouldn't be looking at individual situations. If there's a will of PAC and council to look at something, we should be looking at it on the merits of the outcome based on across the county perspective versus individuals and trying to suit a solution to an individual. We should be looking at policy at a higher level than that. But thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Killen for the third time?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just, I guess, years ago, there was such a thing as spot zoning. And that's something that I know that it's not a favorite subject of our planning department, but it would maybe allow some of these folks to at least have a chance.
Ms. Mosher?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Killam, spot zoning is exactly what Ms. Javerick just described. It's zoning on the basis of an individual situation. When we know our agricultural areas are regional, they are, you know, it's not on a property by property basis that we find good agricultural soil. It's on a broader scale. That's why the soil mapping isn't appropriate in terms of creating lots, because it's done at a far greater scale than a property by property basis. Similarly, spot zoning is not preferred by the province. I believe the last time we drafted a site-specific municipal planning strategy, I think we got a very firmly worded letter back from the province, so they're not keen on spot zoning or spot policies.
Is that a recent response from the province or something that goes back quite a few years?
It predates me, so certainly more than 8 years ago. I would guess at least 10 to 15 years ago.
I believe that timeline's about right, and specifically it was policy specific to the agricultural zone that the province was not happy with the approach taken. They ultimately approved it, but they let us know that don't do this again.
Hang on. Just don't touch your button. There.
Okay, oh, sorry. At this time where there's a housing crisis and there's a lot of folks that would like to be able to build, it's more inexpensive at times to build in the rural area, if indeed the land isn't prime agricultural land. But do you feel that the province may look at it differently at this point?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm not prepared to speak to the province, but again, speaking about our policies, our policies do not support wide opportunities for rural development. Our policies support putting housing where our infrastructure is and condensing that and protecting the agricultural land.
I understand that. I just kind of get back to the idea that we are a rural municipality, and there's folks in the rural area that would like to be able to build in the rural area.
Absolutely, and I would counter back, both North Mountain and South Mountain have plenty of opportunity.
Okay, I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Killam. So just in sort of fleshing this out, I'm not necessarily thinking that this is a planning advisory committee issue. If the councillors who spoke on this wish to pursue this, would it be a councillor item for council, or would it be something that they would bring forward to planning advisory committee? Just to give them a heads up as to where they can go with this. Oh, sorry.
You're exactly right. That would be a councillor item, potentially timing-wise, budget time. It's not a bad time to get that into the discussion, but it would be council.
Okay, thank you. And the only reason I say that is because I've always viewed Planning Advisory Committee as being for specific items, for staff to bring specific items and planning applications to us. A broader view of the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw and changes to that should come through council. So we've given you an opportunity here and some ideas of how to go about that. Okay? We're good. Thank you. The only other item that I had under other business is that Ms. Javorek mentioned this at the beginning. We are missing one citizen member, and we are openly asking people to consider putting your names forward for a 2-year term. If you are interested in doing that, you can contact either the planning department or just the general phone number here at the county, and they can lead you to where you can find an application. And there's some words from staff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to clarify, there's actually an application right on the website that you could, that the public could fill out to apply for that position.
Great. So calling all people. Thank you very much. This is an opportunity for public comment. Our one member of the public just left. so I guess we're not doing that. The date of our next meeting will be January the 16th, 2024, in these chambers at 1 p.m. And in saying that, I wish everyone on the committee and staff a very happy holiday in whichever way you celebrate. And we hope to see you all in the new year, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Morris, Ms. Friars, because she's going south. I'll call the question. All those in favor, please register your vote. Notice I said in favor. And we are adjourned till 2024. Thank you all very much.